Another Sunday, another case of the Scaries to start your work week. Welcome to the newest edition of the Sunday Scaries, where we have all your gore, lore, and more, covering all the latest horror happenings, slicing open all the latest horror news, and dissecting it bit by bit, finding all those juicy innards. Pour that cup of coffee and turn on your fright light while we take you on a tour of terror. And Dylan, you are looking extra scary here on the Sunday Scaries, all in the spirit, of course, looking like the Pumpkin King himself.
Yes, I committed. I committed hard. This is Halloween week. This is the Sunday scaries of right before Halloween. So, that's tomorrow. I was like, I'm just gonna get all dressed up and do this specially for this show. No, I actually just got back from taking my son trick-or-treating for the first time. If you keep up with us on the Instagram, you would have seen that yesterday. So yeah, lots of fun. We all went as pumpkin themed entities. My wife was the headless horseman, and my son was the pumpkin head. So that was kind of a cute thing. And then I just went with like a fucked up, deranged pumpkin kind of mask thing. But this is many hours old, so it's looking a little rough now. But it was
I was
something pretty
hoping you were
cool.
going to tell me this was a tattoo.
Oh yeah, this is what it was. Yeah. No, I will have some fancy tattoo stuff coming up later today though. So stick around on the channel as well as on the social medias. You might see a little something pop up for that.
And to be extra scary about it, he is getting tattooed with a dirty needle.
Yes, of course, always, always. You got to recycle. That's
Gotta
number one
gotta
on this
live on the edge,
channel.
sir. But
Absolutely.
we are doing something a little different here on the Sunday Scaries. Usually, I'm the one that kind of creates the stories and kind of holds your hand through the horror happenings here. But we switch it up a little bit. I'm working on something that is kind of consuming my time a little bit. So Dylan decided to tackle all the news stories this week.
I did, yes. So I will be presenting the news as well as the Gorecast. You're going to get a whole lot of me talking today and just a little bit of Luke. So we're giving Luke a little bit of a break this week. No, I'm kidding. He'll have plenty of room to chit chat it up with us. But yeah, no, he's got an important project. We're excited to show you guys that he's working on. We're hoping to have that out here tomorrow.
Yes.
We still on track? Seems like everything's going well.
Very on track, yes.
All right,
So
good.
we're getting very close. Just a couple of cleaning up shop and stuff like that. So the bulk of it is done. It's just kind of the bells and whistles now. It seems like.
Yeah, it's something I'm excited to see. You've been talking about it for a little bit, and when you pitched this idea, I was like, "That's brilliant. Let's go." I love how my eyes are highlighted by the black. I feel like if I just like hold my eyes like this the whole time, I'll look really spooky.
See, there we go. See, make this a tattoo, sir. This is it.
I
You're
can't
calling.
commit. I think they would fire me at my job.
Maybe.
So until I make this my full-time job, until we can start earning money doing this kind of work, where I can just stay in my house like a recluse and just work on YouTube videos, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
See, this will be first order business when we get that ad revenue going. Is we're gonna take that all. We're not gonna use it for the channel. We're just gonna get Dylan's face tattooed.
Just many face tattoos, just looking fucked for the rest of time. But yeah, no, Hal, this was a pretty interesting week, I would say.
Yeah.
We saw Pray for the Devil, which was
Mhm.
pretty boring, I would say. If you haven't checked out that review, go ahead and look at that. That was yeah, just not what I was hoping for the end of the month kind of big October film.
Yeah. There was no grand unveiling for us. We just went and we saw it already hesitant. And then as we're sitting in the theater, I think those were confirmed probably about 15, 20 minutes in at most. Very, we talked about it, very generic film. Nothing much there, kind of filing it away. I barely remember it as we're talking about it now, to be honest. And I just scoff every time that I see the trailer popping up in the streaming services now.
Doesn't hurt my feelings that bad, but I agree with you that it is pretty forgettable. Definitely not the high note that I wanted us to go out on, considering the pretty stacked year we've had with horror. But I mean, we do have a pretty strong November coming. It's not as stacked as last few months have been. September and like the front half of October were pretty heavy, but we got a couple of good ones with like The Menu and Bones and All. Seems like a little heavier
Yeah.
when it comes to that, a little more psychological stuff with that too.
It's going to keep
So
November intriguing for sure.
Yep. And then, we'll have things, some good genre pieces like, we had a couple of Christmas themed horror flicks that'll be coming our way via streaming, as well as Violent Night, which is coming, which isn't necessarily a horror, but it's going to be violent. It's going to be Santa Claus. So I figure we'll cover that.
Well,
We
we'll
could
twist
definitely
it
talk
in some
about it.
fashion. There's going to be, I mean, the violence is horrific. So that's all the tie-in we need here. So,
Yeah.
David Harbour, we're obviously covering it. We love our Christmas-themed horror thing. So any which way we can find to kind of twist and meld things into the channel, we will do that.
100%. Yeah. And so you had said, before we get started with everything, get into the format, you had said there was a little rumblings from Peacock
Yes.
about a potential topic we covered. What was it, last Sunday Scaries or
Yeah,
the
I think
one
it was.
previous?
I think it was last. It was branching off of our Halloween ends discussion. I believe it was last week. There was an article out there, and I've only seen one thus far, but I wasn't actively looking for it, so there may be a few out there. Very scarce in terms of news and things, just like you said, little rumblings of right now of Peacock wanting to develop or already starting to develop something in regards to the Halloween franchise. Now, is that a Michael Myers vehicle? They haven't said, or is this more so going toward the anthology route that we talked about kind of last week? So there's a lot of possibilities out there. Like looking at this, I'm intrigued, as we talked about, maybe going that anthology route with doing something maybe specifically with Haddonfield or just in general, weird stories, almost like Twilight Zone or something like that, I think would be intriguing. But, I'm not against some sort of, not necessarily. I don't know how a Michael Myers vehicle would be in terms of if we're talking a weekly episodic thing, or are we talking like, a 3-film deal where it's exclusively on Peacock just to get those subscribers? I don't know, but I'm intrigued to see what they're gonna produce there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I definitely hope it's more of an anthology thing and we kind of get a little bit more of the inner workings to Haddonfield. Like we had just done our another thing we did this week was our Halloween 4 watch along, which was really cool. A lot of great guys showed up in there to hang out with us and watch some stuff. Here's Johnny and TW. If you guys are watching now, thanks for showing up and watching that with us, guys. It was a great deal of fun.
Great
We had a great
conversation.
conversation. Yeah, it was definitely something we plan on doing again, and we will be doing shortly. But it's one of those things where I really would like to see more of Haddonfield and put more stories in that universe. And I don't need Michael right now. I don't need it right away, I would say. I think let him rest for a little bit. We've played with that toy for quite some time. We've kind of beaten it into the ground again. So let's just let's let him sit. Maybe we work our way into that. I'd like to see some more original stories come in this universe first.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting almost building towards something. You know, I don't know if you go the Haddonfield strictly route, just because packing in so many odd stories in one town would maybe get a little like, what, now there's a goddamn werewolf in Haddonfield, like all that stuff. So it's like maybe spanning across and just with these weird stories in these small little towns would be interesting. With an overlying idea maybe that especially like how sometimes these seasons will uh kind of tease something, whereas maybe we tease that Michael is around in Haddonfield and things like that as the side view, and we can even go that route of a fake Michael Myers, just someone imitating him, because it's anthology, it's a small episodic thing. I don't think that would be a big deal in terms of an imitation of Michael and saving kind of him for those big films, because I don't see a Michael vehicle in the sense of an episodic, weekly kind of 10 episode thing coming back every year. I think that would be way too much overkill. Now, if they were talking like um, a, a film deal in terms of like 3 for Peacock, down the road here, I don't necessarily would be against that. I don't think it would be coming out anytime soon, especially after. I think the audience needs that little breather, so I could see this being developed for way down the line. But I would honestly love that anthology idea to kind of get this back on track, do something with the Halloween franchise in general to kind of keep it interesting and kind of in a general audience's line of vision for a while, and then kind of work us back into the Michael stories.
No, I agree. I think that's a good way to go about it. Just whatever they end up doing. I think we need to put Michael to bed for a little bit. I think we can
Yeah.
all agree on that. Like, let's just try something a little different, which I know is kind of odd considering we had so many complaints with, the kind of different route they took with ends. But I will always have to reiterate this, I feel like, because there will always be people who will be like, oh, well, you didn't like that. I don't have a problem with the storyline that they went with. I have a problem with how they chose to interloop it and how they chose to tell it, because it's like, again, Halloween Ends should have been the wrap up of that trilogy. We shouldn't have just gone on to, another story. Like, I'm sure Halloween Ends, the Corey Cunningham story, would have been a great fourth film in this David Gordon Green like kind of series. If they wanted to say, like I've said it 100 times, they wrap up the Laurie and Michael storyline in this, and then we maybe take a year or two off, come back with this with Allison as the lead and Corey's story getting introduced. Great. I think it would have fit really well. I think it would have been intriguing. It would have been fresh, would have been fun, but it's just like you're trying to jam two movies together. Just wasn't my thing.
Yeah, it wasn't out working. I mean, we've talked about it to excess in terms of that Corey Cunningham storyline. It would work in a different context, a different director, a different story arc, different saga. Just as a standalone film would have been perfect, I think. Plus, you wouldn't have to tell so many different stories with already developed characters, and we would get more time there. So I'd be intrigued to see, if that popped up on streaming a few years down the road, or was part of this anthology series where I'm talking about, a Michael doppelganger, and it turns out not to even be Michael. I would be accepting of that. It's like almost the season finale of something. I think that would be intriguing, and would be a decent story as a standalone.
I agree. But we could drone on about Halloween Ends and the Halloween franchise,
We always
as
do.
everybody on this channel should know by now. I say, without further ado, we should probably get into the format of the show.
Oh
And
yeah, let's hop into
since
it.
since I'm running the show this week, we get to kick things off first with the kill of the week. Alrighty, but Luke, I will let you take this one off to start. This was definitely I didn't know what we were going to pick, because even though I did the news stories, Luke still assembled the clips and the footage for this. So, Luke, without further ado, introduce us to what we're talking about here today.
Oh yes. So this week we are picking a film that is near and dear to our hearts. Actually appeared on the first iteration of Splattercast, because we love it so much. We'll definitely dust this one off eventually and discuss in long form once again. We are talking Slither this week, which is a James Gunn directed. Definitely, as we've talked about before. I don't even know. Well, we probably really haven't talked about it here since we've rebooted and retconned the channel.
I'm sure we've
Um,
mentioned it, but yeah, we've never like had a long form conversation
yeah,
about it.
where it's like, you definitely get the Guardians feels here. Very intriguing kind of concept. Really harkens back to those science fiction films, of the 60s and 70s. I think very intriguing stuff here.
Oh yeah. So we'll dive right into that kill here and take a look and see what we got. Now, I'm going to say before I click this clip here, this has always been, because I saw this movie when I was young. This is one that my dad rented from Netflix. So right when it had come out, um, he rented it, and we watched it together. And I liked it a lot. I was very intrigued. This sequence always disturbed the hell out of me. And even rewatching it a few years ago for that episode of Splattercast, still, it's just very unsettling.
It's a disgusting circumstance,
It
to be
it really
honest.
is. So we'll get right into it. Yeah, Luke, I'll let you take us away with this because
Well, we've got Miss Brenda in the barn. Now she's been missing ever since Grant was at the house, and they've been trying to locate her. And they stumbled upon this little barn here, which we'll see. We'll find out they've been lured to, and they've seen her. She is just totally bloated. This is something where, like you're saying, you had seen this. This was always used in promotional stuff, like on USA and stuff. Whenever this was coming on in terms of commercials, always freaked me out as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just the unsettling nature of the lead up to this as well, because like you said, you see Grant with the tentacle, it's jumps out of his stomach or chest or whatever, and then jams into her stomach, and you
Yep.
just see him pumping her full of these slugs, and then to see this reveal, like my God, just the unsettling nature of how far she's had to stretch, the body horror of this sequence, I think really sticks with me. And
Yeah.
I'd say, strangely enough, The Thing is my favorite horror film, and that is infamous for body horror. I love movies like The Fly, infamous for body horror. They don't nearly disturb me as much as this sequence does. Like the ripping of that flesh there. Oh,
Yes.
God.
And it's just disgusting. I always think about that when they're bursting at the seams there. It's like when your hands get dry in the winter and you can't help them but crack. It's like it's probably that pain, but times 1,000. Just because absolutely horrible. And I like the way they kind of make the skin look. I'm assuming that part's like practical, where she's very bloated and they're doing the close
The
ups of the skin, where it's
close-ups
like,
are definitely, there's
yeah,
some practicality to that for sure.
where it's like very wet, like perspiration, and just to think, just the aspect there, as we're talking of her stretching and being filled with these little worms, as she comments. Obviously, we didn't hear the audio, but she can feel them moving around in her. Just absolutely unsettling stuff.
Yeah, no, that shit fucks me up hard. Like this is definitely one of those ones that like if this scene is on and I'm eating, I'm done. Like I will
Yep,
put
we're
down
calling
whatever.
it.
I could have the most exquisite gourmet pizza, burger, steak, dinner, whatever you want to put in front of me, lasagna, anything that I love, and I couldn't eat it after seeing this scene. Swear to God, like it's just one of those things. I don't know why. It just still to this day irks me real bad. So we'll dive in a little closer. Thankfully, I'm done with the Halloween candy for the evening. So
It's all coming back up. And just like, this is interesting again, because we talk about, sometimes these kills are very intimate. Like last week, we had Chucky and Miss Kettlewell, where it's just a one-on-one thing, where she's got spectators here. She's bursting at the seams,
mhm.
absolutely, like just an unsettling on a different level there. And she's going, they're tearing me apart. It's just like to think she can feel everything that's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, some of you might say like, "Oh God, the CG is so dated and everything." There, I don't know. I think it's just the way that it's presented, and the sound and the way she's talking. You're right; those lines of dialogue. It's just it's all really well executed. I mean, James Gunn, he can get under your skin. He's great with this shit. I mean, even revisiting a similar style of entity with Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Which did you ever finish Peacemaker?
Peacemaker, I think I may have a couple episodes left, to be
Oh
honest.
my god, dude, that show is so good. But not to spoil anything for anybody, but they deal with a similar subject matter in the sense of what the threat kind of is in that show.
Okay.
They reveal that pretty early on, I feel like, with some of the things they have going on. So not too big of a spoiler, but it is one of those things where it's like you get a lot of those similar tones in that show. They handle it with much more of a comedic angle, and I don't think it's nearly as gross, like with the slugs and everything, like in this film. But it's just you can really tell that James Gunn just has an affinity for this style of horror, the possession via animal critter or whatever the hell taking over your body, the body snatching element. And again, like he just presents it in this like very disgusting and very gut wrenching kind of way.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're not checking out in terms of eating by the time she bursts, but by the time those slugs are jumping into your mouth, I mean, that is just something again where we go from one unsettling thing to the next, and it's like that is the aspect of this kill where yes, she's bursting, but then she's bursting with all these things that want to, enter your body and take you over. And they're just the group there is just being coated with them. She explodes and they're all just covered in them, fighting for their lives at that time. So it's like this is, you know, i- unsettling from every aspect here. So very intriguing kill. That's why I was like, you know what, we got to dust this one off and put it for the kill of the week.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely I see why you did it. It's been a while since we discussed Slither. Definitely highly recommend that film though, even though I just talked about
Absolutely.
how it makes me a little pukey. But it's definitely well worth the watch, especially if you're a fan of things like Night of the Creeps or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It is really a great tongue in cheek love letter to those films.
Yeah, and it's like I love when these different directors in terms of maybe they do more comedy or something, kind of step out and take their shot at horror, because I think it works just because most of the time they're coming from a unique perspective on things, so they're kind of bringing that different voice than we're used to seeing in terms of a lot of horror stuff. So that's why I think Slither works on so many levels. It's one of those things where you can really see that this was a love letter from James Gunn in terms of films like that. So again, yes, the CGI may be a little bit dated, but those are things I can overlook because of the quality of this film.
Absolutely. But I think it's time we pay a little moment of silence here for our fallen victim. Poor old Brenda.
She never had a shot.
No, all she did was, you know, basically, I mean, she committed the other side of adultery, basically trying to lure Grant into sleeping with her. But hey, I mean, she didn't deserve to die. I mean, like, I'm sorry, it's not really the ultimate coin to pay there for that, in my opinion.
Oh man, what a end she meets here.
Absolutely. But alrighty, that's going to move us into our next segment, which we love to call the history of horrors.
Trapped in the Middle Ages.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
And this is a fun one this week. This is one that we got to talk about at a little bit of length. I think about 3 weeks ago now.
Yes, I believe so.
So this is a good one for us to cover this month. With the release of Halloween Ends, we went through the first three original Halloween films. Fucking obviously 1978, Halloween 2, and then Season of the Witch. So with this kind of falling on today, which is the 30th, it just gives us another opportunity to gush about this excellent sequel.
The only sequel in this franchise, I feel, the definitive
to
Halloween 2.
some, I guess. But yes, directed by Rick Rosenthal, written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, supposed to be the end of Michael Myers. And that was definitely the intent when writing this, because Carpenter famously stated, we don't have to get into all the details because I said we have a full kind of video breaking this film down. He basically finished the script on a case of beer, trying to, pull his hair out and figure out what he needed to do to get this right. And he's just never really loved the work that came out with it. And he has always stated that he thought Michael Myers should have been a one and done. So with the fact of this being, kind of his hand being forced in a way to write this sequel, you can kind of see where he was eager to kind of give Michael a definitive end in a way that nobody could survive a huge gas explosion in a hospital. Nobody, especially
But
let alone two people. Am I right?
but as we found out yesterday during our live stream, life finds a way.
As they say in Jurassic Park, yes.
So in this one, I always get kind of baffled when John Carpenter says, he had writer's block coming up with this one, doesn't really have a love for it, because this film, as we talked about it, we both love it, and this for me is such a quality follow-up for that original one. This is where we get in line with that slasher element here. A lot of good suspense, a lot of good jump scares, a lot of good kills in this one. I mean, it's hard for me to believe someone wrote this with writer's block because it just feels just the quality of the film itself going right into picking up where the events from the original one left off and going that route with it. They didn't miss a beat. It's a great companion. So it's like that always baffles me when he says that. Every time anyone talks about it, it's like this is such a good film.
I agree. And it's one of those ones where we do have the hindsight is 2020 at the end of the day, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like we get to sit here as kids watching this movie with, 4 and 5 already been released up to that point. I think maybe even 6. So, it's one of those things where it's like we kind of get to miss out on, really what that time period was like when we only had the first Halloween film and kind of how
yeah,
the zeitgeist was and how people were talking about it. Because to us, these films have always existed. So it's one of those things where I think it's an easier pill for younger generations to swallow because these films have always been there.
yeah,
And that's why I think that, we enjoy it. But even somebody like my dad loves this movie and he was alive right when this movie was coming out. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is it's definitive. And there's a lot of people that we've spoken to who recently had said that they remember watching the 1978 movie on TV leading up to this film coming out. So it's like I really agree with you, man. I don't understand where all the hate comes from when it comes to the creators of this one, because especially even Tommy Lee Wallace, he doesn't like this movie. He didn't want
yeah,
anything to do with it. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just so weird because, like, again, it's really solid. And, for a film supposedly directed by Rick Rosenthal, the more you dive into that, the more you kind of see that maybe a good majority of this was ghost directed by John Carpenter. It kind of makes sense. But, it's kind of like a poltergeist situation. But, it's one of those things where it's like, I still put this one in high regard. To me, this is still my definitive kind of trilogy would be for the Halloween franchise would be the first, this, and then Halloween 4.
yeah. In this one, it's like, we talk about reappraisals and things like that, where audiences have had a longer time to sit with these films. And, Halloween 2 was one for me that was always on television. It played regularly. The original, not so much. I mean, like, I would see it every so often, but like 2, 4, and 5 were always on television for me. So I can see an audience maybe more so coming around to this film, especially always being on TV and then kind of making those memories, even if you are more of an adult when this one came out into the theater and maybe you didn't even like it as it's playing on TV and you're making more memories. Plus, you have times to kind of really sit down and dissect it a little more in terms of the kills and just kind of the pacing of this film. I can see people coming around a little more on this one. It's just like, kind of going into it, and again, they're probably so far removed from the film, directors and writers saying that they don't like it, where it's like, first coming out, always have to be pretty positive about the film. But this one where we talk about the era of cash grabs, and they don't really add any elements to the story or anything like that, whether John Carpenter doesn't have a love for this film or not, this doesn't feel like that basic cash grab to me. This feels like we tried to move the story forward. We tried to give the audience what they were coming for, and we wanted to we wanted to live in the space again. We wanted to bring you back to Haddonfield. So it does seem like they treated this with a level of respect in terms of trying to make an adequate sequel, and I think they achieve that because, like we're talking about, this is one of the definitive films in those installments. So it's like, for me, for my money, you can't beat Halloween 2.
No, I would say if you want to deem this film anything, this is a cash grab with class.
Oh, there we go.
And you don't get that very often. But alrighty then, I think that's wrapping us up here for the history of horrors. So why don't we move into our stories for the week, and we'll see if I can get through my own writing here without stumbling and stammering through all of this.
Take us on the journey, Dylan.
I will do that. And first up is a little segment, a little story we're going to call Guess Who's Knocking. Natty Knox will be bringing back the classic duo of Dwight H. Little and Danielle Harris for another slasher surprise. The film chronicles the story of a small-town babysitter played by Charlotte Fontaine, I don't know how you say that, Jardiman, who on Halloween Eve, along with her kids, has to survive a serial killer, Abner Honeywell, who himself is a traumatized son of a B-movie horror legend known as Natty Knox. The film will also be releasing the film will also be releasing with another great genre icon, Robert Englund, also set to star in this film, as well as Bill Moseley. So, this is pretty interesting. I think it's pretty timely that this story comes across our desk after we just talked about Halloween 4. We just had the live stream, and we literally said on there so many times, at least I said so many times that I can say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, about how I think that Dwight H. Little really understood the assignment. He got the homework. He knew what he was doing when it came to the Halloween franchise. So to see him coming back to do a slasher, but not only that, but with Danielle Harris and Robert Englund and Bill Moseley, this could be some exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board. I don't know what Dwight H. Little's filmographies look like since Halloween 4, so I can't really say diving down that rabbit hole, is it going to hold the quality of Halloween 4? Because, I mean, again, if you were there during that live stream, we had so many positive things to say about Halloween 4 and kind of the world building that goes around into Haddonfield and how alive the town feels. And again, as we talk about making it a character and making it unique. So I'm intrigued by this. As soon as I think you had stumbled upon this right after the live stream, and we had briefly talked about it. I'm intrigued to see where they go here. I'm a big fan of Danielle Harris. I love when they do load up some horror icons in a film, just to kind of, you always love the cameos in those. So I'm intrigued to see where they're going to go. So Danielle Harris probably is the mainstay. I don't know. Robert Englund is maybe a cameo. I don't know if he's going to be a regular or just kind of doing like flashbacks or something.
I'm wondering if he is going to play if he's going to actually play Natty Knox.
Yeah.
And then they have like Bill Moseley as the killer.
Yeah.
Because that would make sense to me age-wise, I think, lining up. And then, I think Danielle Harris is going to play one of the leads. And then, obviously, this Fountain Jardim, or Charlotte Fountain Jardim. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that last name, so I apologize. But, she is also set to star in the film. So they may be co-leads. So...
Okay, so this will be intriguing. Sometimes, again, these are hit or miss, though, where it's like, now that you're saying that, sometimes the horror icons are taking the back seat, whereas we have like a new younger actor in the forefront a little more, which maybe is what we can expect from this, where I was really hoping Danielle Harris was going to be like the main character here to kind of get her back into the form, because she does kind of seem to fall by the wayside a lot of the times in terms of films like this, where she has become a glorified cameo. And again, I've always enjoyed her roles. I think she brings a lot to the table. So I'm hoping they give her a lot of dialogue to chew on here and kind of showcase her talent, because Danielle Harris in these slasher films, again, you can't beat them.
No, absolutely. And I'm really happy to see her back and working in some things recently here too. But to go over Dwight H. Little's filmography, it's got some interesting ones in here. I wouldn't say it's horrible. We've got The Phantom of the Opera, the one that he did with Robert Englund, so they have an established background together. So I haven't seen that, but it's been recommended to me. And then he did this Steven Seagal film, which you're probably familiar with, Marked for Death.
Yes, I've seen that one.
All right, how's that one?
In terms of Steven Seagal films, it's not bad at all.
All right, awesome.
I think Danielle Harris is in it.
Oh, really? That's
I
awesome.
believe so.
And then ones that kind of stick out to me. I don't know if this one is anything. Let me see if this, because I this is one of those titles. Rapid Fire. Does that stick out to you, Brandon Lee?
No, I've seen the cover of it, but that is a Brandon Lee film I have not seen.
Okay, because I'm just like some of these like 90s action flicks will kind of
Yeah, he went the
they
action route.
yeah, they kind of he went a little bit that way. Then he did Free Willy 2, The Adventure Home. Not a bad sequel. I rented that like 25 times from Blockbuster back in the day.
And you're
Um,
like, why wasn't this a shark?
yeah, right. And then he did a few episodes of The X-Files. He also did some of Law and Order. A one that I actually can say that I do enjoy as a sequel is Anaconda's Hunt for the Blood Orchid. Not bad.
I have not
In the
seen that
grand
one.
scheme. Okay, in the grand scheme of the Anaconda films, that's a high mark. Okay, because
Okay,
like I like the
perfect.
first one, I like the second one. Once you get past that, you're fucked. All right, like it all falls apart. And then he did a bunch of television over the last, like I'd say through the mid 2000s. He did things like Prison Break, Castle 24. He's kind of put his hands in a lot of things here. But he hasn't done any horror properties other than the Dust Till Dawn series. He directed
Okay.
4 episodes of that. So he hasn't done anything film wise, like just movie, in a little while. But he's definitely stayed consistent and he stayed busy. I think that like going off of his work on Halloween 4 is what I'm probably most familiar with. And then I guess Anaconda's like, hey, we could be in for a fun flick here. I don't think that it's anything to write off completely.
Yeah, I think I can see this one going straight to streaming
Oh
somewhere.
yeah.
Just because with the horror names attached to this, there's already a built-in audience there. So I can see this being a big one for streaming. I'm intrigued to see what they bring. Again, I think we need some of that small town world building. Really kind of take that pacing that we do have from Halloween 4. Bring that into the equation here. I'm excited for this one. Anytime we have some of these directors that have directed some of the iconic films, especially with him kind of pivoting and going more the action route for a lot of this stuff and not really diving too deep in the horror realm. After Halloween 4, I'm intrigued to see what he's going to bring to a new film here, especially in what it probably comes out next year, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's in post-production right now. So.
Okay, so I'm intrigued to see what his new take on these films are going to be. And I'm always looking for new slashers to enjoy. So I'm intrigued to see if this is going to be something where it's going to be a one-off. Are we looking to kind of build another franchise here and make it exclusive to one of these streaming services? So I don't know. It could be intriguing.
Yes, we'll get into later. Some of these streaming services are hunting for some new properties. But yeah, we'll move on to our next story here. We're going to be talking about running with the pack. This is a pretty interesting one. I'm intrigued by this quite a bit. But Florence Pugh, best known for her roles in things like Midsummer and Black Widow, will be teaming up with Alexander Skarsgård for his directorial debut titled The Pack. The film, which begins shooting in March, follows a group of documentarians who brave the remote wilderness of Alaska in the efforts to save a nearly extinct species of wolves. When the crew is brought back together at a prestigious awards ceremony, tensions flare up as a deadly truth threatens to unravel their work. And, so I don't know if it's necessarily leaning too deeply into horror. The words that were described in the article on Bloody Disgusting from the obviously Alexander Skarsgård and everything, where it's very Nightcrawler-esque. So this definitely kind of leans into that more psychological horror kind of aspect to it. So I'm very intrigued by this though, just because I'm a big Alexander Skarsgård fan. I'm an even bigger Florence Pugh fan. So it's just one of those things where it's like I'm curious to see what he does behind the camera, because like a lot of his work as of late in front of the camera has been pretty exceptional. And to draw a big name like Florence Pugh to your project like this, I don't know if they've worked together, so I don't know what their relationship is outside of the like the Hollywood system, if they're friends or whatnot. But like to have her sign on to this, that's a pretty big deal because she is kind of one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood right now.
And Alexander Skarsgård is not direct or not acting. He's strictly directing, as far as we know.
Let me double check into that. I should have done my research there, but all they spoke about was him directing.
Okay, because I'm intrigued. I don't know. Do we have any Skarsgårds that are directing right now? I know everyone's in front of the camera. I can't think of anyone that's been specifically behind the camera. So I'm intrigued to. I know going over this article was very intriguing to say, oh no, he's going behind the camera right now because, like you said, his performances are always so strong. So he definitely would. I feel like have an eye in terms of, especially this subject matter in terms of what he's going to need from an actor, and then kind of going to Florence Pugh here, where it's going to be a little more psychological. And I mean, you look at Midsummer, and it's just like what she brings there with the trauma, the opening scenes there are just some of the most compelling things that I've seen on film in the past just few years. Such a strong opening and very traumatic, and you can see that in her acting throughout Midsummer, which is already a long film. So to kind of sustain the level of trauma and make it believable the way that she does gives me really high hopes for this film. It's like when we say Nightcrawler vibes, I mean, you're really pulling out something very strong there. I mean, we both have a love for Nightcrawler.
Yeah,
and,
Nightcrawler is one
and
that we'll have to talk about on the show at some point.
Absolutely. And it's like, and that's a different kind of horror where I think it falls in line there, but it's very psychological, very much a thriller in that aspect of building so much tension. So when you're saying that something like this is Nightcrawler-esque, you have big shoes to fill. But I think like as we're talking, Alexander Skarsgård behind the camera, we don't really have anything to base it on. So but again, strong acting from him, so I have high hopes for him. And Florence Pugh, again, another juggernaut in Hollywood right now in terms of being able to kind of put on those award-winning performances. So I expect so many big things out of her, and to kind of go this route in terms of what the subject matter here is, and kind of put this on her shoulders. I feel like this is going to be something we're going to give a glowing review to eventually.
I'm hoping so. I'd really like to see this kind of come in late 2023 and really blow our minds. But one of the things that I want to point out too is that Alexander Skarsgård is working. He is billed as a cast member on IMDb right now as well. I don't know to what extent. There's not much information there, so that's all I can say for now. But I do want to point out also that he, when I look at somebody like an actor of his prominence stepping behind the camera, I tend to look and see kind of who he's been working with as of lately, to kind of motivate him to do this. And obviously Robert Eggers comes up as one of those with his stellar performance in The Northman, which you still need to see, I believe.
I do. That's on my November watch list, so I'll tackle that one.
Not a horror film at all, but seriously one of the best films of the year. I think outside of horror, that's still my favorite film of the year, and I saw that thing in March. Yeah. So that just goes to show you kind of where my head's been at. But then you kind of see that he's been working with people like him, Jeremy Saulnier with Hold the Dark, which I think that we both hold at a much higher regard than what a lot of other people have said. That movie's got like a 5.6. I actually quite enjoy that movie.
I remember that one coming out, and we did for by admission only, and I thought we were both a little lukewarm on it at that time. I've never went back and reappraised that one. It's one that's been on my list to go check out again, because I think you had went back and watched it and said it was you liked it even more after watching it. But again, that was one of those things where when you watch Blue Ruin and you watch Green Room,
it's a different kind of animal. It's a lot slower than what we'd expect from him before. But yeah, I mean, like you see, like those two names especially stick out to me there, just because it's kind of like and as far as genre people go, I know he just recently worked with Adam Wingard on Kong vs. Godzilla, not turning in an Oscar-winning performance there by any means, but it's one of those things where it's like, and it's not that he's bad, it's just you're there to see Godzilla and Kong fight. Like, I mean, come on. But it's one of those things where it's like, I think that he's definitely, if he's kind of channeling that influence, then we could see some really good shit from him
Yeah.
here. And I'm hoping it'd be nice to see him kind of break out here and come out with a big swing. And not only that, but also have, Florence Pugh come out and be in another real interesting property.
In just the concept seems intriguing in terms of trying to pin down what this film's going to look like, because what do they say? There are researchers out there
In
trying
the
to save
Alaskan wilderness, yeah.
So, you think like especially if we're going to go kind of a psychological thing, okay, that's where our story is going to be. But then now we're talking about what we're at an awards thing or show, and then there's a dark secret. So it's like we're talking about a couple different settings here. So it's very intriguing to see what this film's going to look like when it actually comes out. Is this going to be flashbacks to Alaska, or how are we going to do this? So I'm intrigued to see what it's actually going to look like as we're watching this film, because it seems like we're going to get a few different settings here, and sometimes like that, especially with the psychological things, where um, sometimes you want that closed, confined space, but that doesn't always mean that you need that to build attention. Because Nightcrawler, when we're talking about those vibes, it's pretty much all over the place. Where he's out and about through the town half the time, so you don't always need that. But I'm just intrigued to see what this film's actually going to look like, because it seems like we're going to be jumping from a few different settings.
Yeah, and I think that it sounds like it's an intriguing concept. It sounds like something that isn't going to be very conventional. So it's like I'm curious to see again what they do with that. It could go another way though. Like, I mean, we gotta take the coin from the other side too, is that it could be biting off a little more
Yeah.
than he could chew. But I want to remain positive on it. Again, I like the actors attached. I like who's behind the camera. I wanna stay positive here with this one.
Yeah, and that's where everything's looking pretty good so far in terms of the talent that's attached. Again, we don't know too much. I mean, we only have a couple blurbs of what the plot's going to be, and I mean, it seems interesting. It's hard to gauge just from that, so you really just have to go by the talent that's attached, and everyone here has been giving great performances. So it's like one of those things you're going to hope for the best here, and the plot doesn't seem too out there. It seems pretty grounded in terms of what we could get. So I'm intrigued. When you hear something like The Pack, you automatically think it's going to be werewolves, but alas, it is not. But I'm intrigued to see what they're going to tell us.
Unfortunately, I know we're pulling for more werewolf content. We'll get there. Alrighty, so that's going to move us into our next story here, which, no surprise to anybody. If you keep up with any of the horror news, we were going to cover this. It's one of the bigger stories of this week. Old habits die hard. Tobin Bell has been confirmed to be joining the cast of Saw 10. Although not the most surprising news, as Bell has appeared in nearly every installment in the franchise. And I say nearly because there are a couple he hasn't. And I think actually that's only the Book of Saw. I don't believe he was in that. Where was I at? In one capacity or another, it does give fans hope that this installment will be heading back to the franchise's roots, giving the fans what they know and love about the Saw franchise. So they have been touting that since they announced Saw 10. That's really where I wanted to take this story. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, Tobin Bell's coming back. We all kind of expected that. We didn't know if they were going to announce that ahead of the film's release or if he was just going to be a surprise. But, I mean, the dude is, Jigsaw. So it's one of those things where it's like he's been the face of the franchise for a long time. So it's like, it doesn't shock me. But they are really trying to say, hey, we're going back to what Saw fans know and love. We're going back to those early days of Saw roots. So, like, do you think that this is overall a good sign, or is it just kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, we're just still going to have to wait and see? Or do you think that it's just like whether they do go back to their roots or not? Is this something that you're excited for, Luke?
So I haven't really been excited about a Saw film since the original, and I kind of just stumbled upon that one. No, I take that back. I was pretty excited for 2 just because of how one ended. So I was like, okay, what are they going to throw my way there? That novelty wears off pretty quick. And hearing Tobin Bell's back, for me, it's great to have a familiar face. He always puts on a great performance. He's iconic in this franchise, but it's at that point where I don't think an audience is actually coming to see Tobin Bell in a Saw film. It's very much the traps, things like that, are really setting the table for the audience to come and have a meal. In the theater. So it's like I don't necessarily if you need Tobin Bell. I mean, I feel more at home in a Saw movie when Tobin Bell is in there, sure, because he can deliver those lines as only Jigsaw can. It definitely doesn't hurt the film, but I don't think it's going to be one of those things where um, a fan of the Saw franchise was going to say, well, if Tobin Bell's not in it, I'm just going to skip over this one because, what Spiral came out. And, I thought they were moving away from the kind of Saw installments, but no, not at all. So it's like, with this one, I'm glad to have him back, but do I think it's going to really up the quality of the film? I don't think it's really going to have that much effect on it either way.
Yeah, and the thing about, I don't want to disparage any massive Saw fans or anything like that, of course. Like, I mean, you love your stuff, and I totally support that. We've stated we're both big fans of the first film. We think it's pretty unique. It does a lot for indie horror filmmaking. And I mean, it put James Wan on the map. So it's one of those things where we respect the hell out of him. And I'm not thinking of his name. Upgrade, Invisible Man. Lee Winnell, yes. So they put them both on the map there. It's one of those things where it's like this again, like you, doesn't necessarily excite me any more than I probably was before. I'm going to check it out. I'm intrigued to see where they're going with it. They do have a director who has already worked on some of the previous installments coming back to this, so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, they're definitely trying to get back to those roots and familiarize it with what the fans enjoyed. But again, it's just like Saw is Saw. They're just kind of doing their thing, which, you could say the same thing for me about like Friday the 13th, Halloween. They are what they are. It just comes down to a matter of taste. And for me, it's just kind of like Saw is something that I'll watch, but I'm not a die-hard fan for. So it's like, for me, this doesn't necessarily get me all that excited, but it is nice to see them still taking steps and trying to put it out there that, hey, we are trying to really get back to what you guys like and expect. So that way, hopefully next October, everybody can walk out of Saw 10 and say, hey, is it a masterpiece of cinema? No, but I enjoyed the hell out of it and I had a great time.
But, in like looking at that initial Saw film, I mean, absolutely iconic, did a lot for the horror community and horror films in general in terms of, adding to the actual story itself and giving you those twists and turns and giving you something that is unique. But then after that, I mean, it became such a marketing juggernaut to say we need one around the Halloween season that, everyone can work on that first film to get that script right and to make it original and say we need to make this film, and that shows. But when you're going, running and gunning, next Halloween after that, we need this, we need that, it's like you're just trying to keep your head above water. So it's like, make a coherent, some sort of coherent story connected by moments of just these elaborate traps. So I'm curious to see if this one is going to bring more of a rich story, something different and unique in terms of, yes, Saw has been dormant. We haven't really had anything unique coming out of here, but now we have a story. Now we have something that we have to tell. Yes, we'll give you the traps just like the audience wants, but we also have this very intriguing story, very much harkening back to that first one. I think that's wishful thinking on my part, thinking that they're going to bring something very fresh and new. But, I mean, maybe we could see what happens. I don't know. I'll hold out hope. Again, we'll probably go see it. So I think it could be intriguing.
We'll definitely be seeing it. Like, we'll have to cover it.
Yeah, so it's like, and that's probably one of the things where I'm definitely not going to be doing it in the near future, but I do want to dust off because I do own the collection digitally, so I might as well go check them out and see what exactly each and every one is offering, because again, they get melded in my head. I can't really pick them out other than 1 and 2. After that, it's just I can't really remember anything specific about these films, so maybe I'm not giving them their due, to be honest, because I don't remember that much about them. So I'm hoping 10 brings some sort of originality to the franchise and says, "Oh no, that's Saw 10."
Yeah, and I never saw the Book of Saw. I wanted to. I just never got around to it. And then since it's been out, I never got a copy of it. That hasn't popped up on any streaming services that I know of that I can check it out on. So, it's one of those ones that still intrigues me. I mean, I've heard, pretty much everything that goes on in it and how people feel about it, even Saw fans. But it's still one that I do want to see just because I am a completionist of it. It's like kind of like I was gonna see Jeepers Creepers Reborn, you know what I mean? Just because it is Jeepers Creepers, I just kind of wish that maybe I didn't go to the theater for that one. But no, I can't say that. That brought a lot of new faces to the channel, so my pain was, it was bountiful. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed that review. But yeah, I'm gonna check this one out for sure when it comes out. But yeah, like you, I agree. Saw has never been really my bag, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm excited to hear that they're trying to come back with some quality, and I hope that they can hit it. And I hope that maybe, in a year's time, we're sitting here eating our words saying, wow, Saw 10 really brought it back to the roots of that first film. That would
Yeah,
be excellent.
and this is one where sometimes going into films you've checked out, like Jeepers Creepers Reborn. Unfortunately, for me, you couldn't get me to the theater to see that one. There's already a stigma there where it's like after these films, they become so bad where I don't have an interest in them. Where Saw is like, it's not really my thing, but if it's on or I'm want to go to someone wants to go to the theater to see it, you're not going to really have to twist my arm. It's like it'll be adequate at best. There'll probably be a few cool traps. At least you'll
Yeah,
get some
it's
gore out of it. So
even
it's
that.
like the franchise has kind of, I don't know, maybe become a little more mundane, I think,
I think
in terms
so.
of storytelling, rather than, a less of quality. They just didn't, I think they quit kind of trying to offer anything really for the story. And that's only what I remember. So maybe I'm misremembering that.
And
But so it's
the
not the worst.
the last one we saw in theaters together was Jigsaw. And
Yes.
even for hardcore Saw fans, that didn't really hit.
Yeah.
Because I think the big thing they really need to do is, really need to re-rack this timeline of what's going on. In my opinion, just because you get into those like 4, 5, and 6, and the shit is just really not adding up as far as like
Yeah.
characters are dead one movie, they come back and it's like, oh, I got out in this like pseudo elaborate way, and it's just kind of like, come on, man, like let's
I think I think they
add some
lost their way.
groundedness to it.
I think they lost their way a lot of times, like how M. Night Shyamalan does, where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, we need to add this, we need to do another twist, where it's like you're always chasing the feeling that fans had from that first film, and it's like, what can we do instead of just focusing on a basic story? They're like, what twist can we give you? So it's like, Saw 10 honestly would probably be the biggest twist would be giving us no twist. You know what I mean? Just let it be a story, kind of get us back into form a little bit, and just see what we get.
I agree there, brother. But all right, moving us into our last story of the day. This is a pretty interesting one. This is one that kind of overtook another story before we started. I call it throwing their hockey mask in the ring. Shudder's general manager Craig Engler held a Reddit AMA on Friday and discussed all kinds of future prospects and dreams for the streaming service. The most interesting, of course, being Engler expressing interest in shepherding the next installment in the Friday the 13th franchise. With all the rumors as of late and strong performances from films like Prey and Hellraiser dominating the streaming charts, could streaming be the new home for Jason Voorhees? And would Shudder be the right team to reincarnate this or resuscitate this long dormant franchise? So this is kind of, some of you might call this like a nothing story. Obviously, I'm a little biased here with my love of Jason Voorhees. I try not to mince any words with it. Like, that's my franchise. So I hear a little bit of news coming from somebody who, has a little bit of power in the industry. They run a very popular horror streaming service that's been really hitting some home runs as of this past year with things like Glorious, and the recent VHS film is apparently really great, and there's a lot of great stuff on Shudder. So it's one of those things where it's like when he's kind of making a statement like that to the public of saying, hey, like I think that Shudder would be an excellent place to get involved with a franchise, a big tentpole franchise like Friday the 13th, and with all the rumors that we have heard as of late, and how it seems like we're getting closer and closer as time goes on. I know it's been kind of quiet on that front recently, but like it seems like we're getting closer to the fact of another one of these films coming to fruition. Do we think that Shudder is potentially going to have a dog in this fight? Do you think that they might try to push Jason to streaming, considering how well some of these other films have done?
Exclusively to streaming, no. I think they would leave way too much money on the table there. With the way like Halloween has been performing at the box office. So like for me, I think this would still get a theatrical release, and I honestly I think that's how I would want it. I go to the theater to see Halloween so I can hear the Halloween theme. So it's like to go to the theater and see Jason on the big screen is something that I personally do want. So it's like I don't think I would want him or Friday 13th, the franchise, to be strictly streaming. I think it could be interesting in terms of, we talk about Halloween and then potentially expanding that universe on Peacock. I think that's something I never watched the Friday 13th series, but I know that's kind of like it also kind of expanding the universe a little bit. So even something like that, I think could be intriguing. Would Shutter be the route to go? I could say yes, but I don't know in terms of how they stack up from against Hulu, Netflix, all the big boys in terms of streaming. So, Shudder's very much, for horror fans, by horror fans. So in that regard, I think there would be some quality there, but in terms of the financials, I don't know if they'd be able to stack up against, because I feel like everyone's going to be ready to try and purchase the streaming rights for Friday 13th.
And I agree with you. That's kind of where my head was at with this story, even though it got me excited to say, hey, I like that people are kind of being outspoken about this and trying to say, they're still putting this into the ether of like, hey, I want Friday the 13th. Because even we had Jason Blum, a month or so ago, say, hey, I want Nightmare on Elm Street. I want Friday the 13th. So,
Yep.
you're getting a lot of these big studio heads coming out and saying like, hey, I want this. And to me, that only shows that the only reason they're being so public about it is it's got to be the fact that, they're getting close. Like,
Yeah.
they know a little more information than we do. And that's just it, again, might be wishful thinking, might be reading too much into it. But I feel like, the fact of the stories that we've gotten, the little teases that we've gotten, and now we have another major studio head coming out and saying, hey, I want a piece of the Friday the 13th franchise, is kind of just sitting here saying to me, okay, there's something going on behind the scenes here. Like
Yeah.
we're getting close to a potential announcement, or at least something saying, hey, Jason's coming back. And I agree with you that I don't necessarily know if I want it to stay on streaming exclusively. But I think that, if you put like somebody like, a Shudder or something like that in the driver's seat, at least a little bit, they got one hand on the wheel, I think that the quality of the film would improve. I think that we would get a much stronger story than we would just kind of leaving it up to like a Blumhouse or something, which I like a lot of the Blumhouse's stuff. I think they do well. I think I like their original properties better, just going off of what we saw with Halloween.
Yeah.
And again, that could just be the creative team behind it. And they're similar, they're cousins to each other, but I would say they are different animals. I think that Halloween, I look for a little more quality in the sense of the atmosphere and storytelling, as to where Friday the 13th, I would really just be fine we don't have to tie up anything. We don't have to really even get too far into the minutia. I just really want you to get that tone right and get us back into that setting and just bring Jason back in this menacing way and watch him slash some people up. Like give us a fun thrill ride there. I don't think we need to muck up the details of like, oh, where's he been or how are we bringing him back or blah, blah, any of this shit. Like, it's just like, go very Jason Lives with it and just have some fun with it, pay some homage, and just, really just give us a quality hack and slash, like that's kind of where my head is at with it, at least.
Yeah, well, and I think Friday 13th is in a little bit different position at this point where, they've been to space, they've been to hell, where it's like it's officially off the rails where I think fans are just accepting in terms of if Jason shows back up and he's at Crystal Lake and none of it, is tying into the previous films, hey, that's okay. We're so far down the road in terms of groundedness that hey, just reverting back to Crystal Lake, and we're not really going to speak on events previously. I don't think fans are going to be in an uproar on that. So, I think just getting us back to Crystal Lake is the biggest thing. Getting that element of Crystal Lake, give us some likable characters that we want to see persevere against Jason, and just put us in there for an hour and a half, hour 45, and let us have some fun. It's like fans are eager to see him back, and with like we've talked about Halloween being probably dormant for the next couple of years, this leaves a big opening for our goalie to come out here and start slashing people. So this is something where I said, I do want to see him in the theater, and to hear the theme, to experience that. But this would be something where they maybe get the dual rights, where we release this, much like how Halloween does, in the theater and on Peacock. So, maybe they go that route with it. But again, I would love for them to expand the universe here and do something a little bit extra, because we've been so hungry for Friday 13th properties and we haven't gotten them in for so long. It's like, please fill our plate and we'll eat it all up, because it's like we haven't been to Crystal Lake in a very long time. So give us any of the stories that you're willing to tell us.
Understood. But yeah, wherever this ends up, I am definitely eager to see where we go with our favorite hockey mask wearing slasher.
And that's where it's like they're gonna have a pick. Once this gets up and running, I mean, you talked about hands on the steering wheel. There's gonna be multiple hands wanting that control. We'll say there's a market here, so it's like I think they're gonna have the pick of any streaming service that they want once they get these rights figured out. Everyone's gonna want this, especially seeing how well Halloween performed.
I seriously think that a Friday the 13th movie coming out will outdo numbers that Halloween 2018 did.
I think so too.
I think it has that potential. I think A Nightmare on Elm Street could do that too. Just because really at the end of the day, we all love Michael. He's a huge icon. But again, like now he's had his run. He went and did his thing. And it's like, geez, like we have not had either of those franchises in the better part of 10 years. So it's like, it's one of those franchises gets off the ground, man. It's going to be huge. Because, you're not even just getting us to the theater, the horror fans. You're going to be getting a lot of people who just are brand associated. Like, oh, a new Jason movie? Let's go. Like, this is going to be so much fun. Like, just what happened with Halloween 2018, I
mean, they've had such an effect that through pop culture from the 80s to the 90s to early 2000s that they've captured the general audience. So they're just going to do huge numbers. Plus, horror movies, people want to be scared. People love it. So coming in with a familiar face, it's, money in their pocket at that point. So Friday 13th is going to do big numbers regardless. So I see it definitely hitting theaters. I think it would be a misstep if it wasn't in theaters. I definitely want to see it on streaming in some aspect. I love the idea. I mean, we just lived through it where We went and saw Halloween Ends in the theater, and then we came home and we watched Halloween Ends again. So I love that accessibility. I hope they do go that route with it, just so that we can go to the theater to see it and then go home and watch it again, because there's nothing like it. You can watch it at your leisure as many times as you want.
No, I like that. I do appreciate that, but yeah, I would like a better quality film, though, at least, in my opinion. But alrighty, that wraps us up for our major headlines here. So why don't we move into my segment of the ending of the show here, where we get to talk this week's Gorecast.
The top of the world, fabulous 1340 KAV, Antonio Bay.
Alrighty, folks. So it's pretty light. Not gonna lie on the Gorecast angle here. I was looking into some things earlier this week, really trying to figure out, what we wanted to discuss, what would be best to talk about here. And let me get us into screen sharingville here real quick, because as always, I like my visual aids when it comes to this stuff. So we don't have a lot to talk about as far as Blu-ray releases, but there was some big news. There's a couple of things that I'm going to highlight here. It's probably going to be a pretty heavy Terrifier 2 Gorecast this week, because the pre-order links and DVDs, collector's editions, Blu-rays, and steelbooks, and 4K, which we did not know was coming, all got announced, which is awesome to hear. Considering I talked about it, whether it was last week or the week before, about how Barbarian, it's still up in the air whether or not that's getting a physical release or not. And, I think that's such a shame, but I love that a film like this that, had such a small budget, was crowdfunded, and has been crushing at the box office, so much so that they've extended its run, I think, like 3 separate times now.
Yeah.
And, it's getting so much coverage on, like, The View. They talked about it a little bit, and other big things. I know Howard Stern just talked about it for a little bit on his show this week. It's one of those things where it's like, it's really making waves. And that's all due to, people like us who went and saw this movie and pushed it out there. And, I'm not trying to toot our own horn. I mean, all of us in general as like horror fans.
We shepherded the film. Come on.
Yeah.
We're the reason for success.
But it's great to see that we're getting a mass, physical release for this thing, man, because like it deserves it. I mean,
did they put the extras on there? Are we getting a commentary? I hope so.
There's nothing about extras right now that I saw.
Okay.
But I'm sure they're gonna announce a few things here. But yeah, I'll go through. Obviously, we have the collector's edition here, very much like the Scream Factory style here, where they have the alternate cover. I like that a lot. And then we have the steel book, which we did cover on Gorecast a week or two ago itself. Really enjoyed that as well. Here's a picture of that again too. But I mean, God, you just have a lot of options here, kids. And then, well, actually, yeah, here's a couple of the bonus features. I actually slipped over this. So there's behind the scenes Terrifier 2, extended Boo Crew interview, director's commentary. There you go, Luke.
There we go.
And fan art. So that's what you're getting with that.
And this is the things that I love, where you're talking about Barbarian, maybe not even getting a physical release, is up in the air, where we get into these things where this is clearly a labor of love here. This is something that they wanted to make, where they're giving you all these special different releases because, again, for horror fans by horror fans, where this is a thing where they know what we want in terms of being a collector and having these options here, having the bonus content, having reversible covers, steel books, 4Ks, all this stuff. They know how meaningful this stuff is to us. So it's great to see that, this variety pack here of potential different versions that you could have.
Yeah. And honestly, it's tough for me to decide what I want, man, because I thought I was pretty committed to that steelbook because I thought it was just getting a Blu-ray release.
Yeah.
But we have a Best Buy exclusive 4K, which that does deter me a little bit, because Best Buy exclusives, they can get picked up in 2 seconds and then you don't see them for years. and then they'll be done. But like this one hasn't even been officially like fully released yet, as far as like a pre-order,
Okay.
and the artwork hasn't even been finalized. But yeah, a 4K is coming, and I love the price on this because movies have just been
Yes.
going up. You know, physical release shit on 4K, you're looking at like $29, you know, a pop on some of that stuff. You know, $22.99 for a 4K is totally reasonable. I was just circling around that on Amazon there. I'll go back to it. You're looking at $19.99 for that collector's edition
It's not bad at all.
release there. And then what did Walmart have it for? We talked about that steelbook was, what was that, $19, $17?
It
Let's
was
click on it real
pretty
quick.
cheap. It wasn't over 20. I know that.
Yeah, it was something silly where it was just like, oh, 1996. That's what
There
it
we go.
was. So it's like, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, for me right now, and I haven't done this in a long time, because I used to collect steelbooks pretty hardcore. I might grab the steelbook of this just because it's so cheap, and then
Yeah.
grab the 4K just because I love the artwork of this and I want to own it.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I was that big of a fan of it. I enjoyed the film that much that, you know, I'm on board with it. And the more I sit with this movie too, as time has gone on, the more I just appreciate it. And I think after Halloween ends, I even appreciate it even more, just because it just feels like a movie that we don't get anymore. And
Yeah.
I love that, you know, we went in not being big fans of the first, you know, just with it being kind of a concept film. But then they really doubled down on that story aspect with this in this one, and they really brought characters that you can relate to and love, as well as the insane amount of gore.
Yeah. And that's where it's like you really do see that progression of filmmaking where it's like that first one, again, we've talked about, it's just a showcase. In this one, we really get into the story. So as soon as we sat down in that theater and we started getting dialogue and building these characters, I was like, wow, this is a different thing right now. They're really trying to actually put a story to the gore here, and it worked out so well. And like you're talking about, you sit with this film more and more, you like it more and more. And that's where the expectations were so low here going in. We didn't really know what to think too much of it. And then coming out of that one, oh man, what a pleasant surprise that was. Even though, you know, and I'm excited to own this because it is a long film. It's you know, a big ask to sit there for what, 2.5 hours. So I'm glad to actually sit down, own this, watch it at my leisure. So if I want to watch an hour of it, I can, and then come back and watch another hour and a half and break up the viewings a little bit. I'm also very excited to dig into that bonus material as well, to sit there and listen to the director and everyone who took part in this, to really see and also that behind the scenes stuff, because they really did a lot of unique things here. I'm glad that we're really getting different opportunities to own, you know, different versions of this.
I agree, and it's exciting. It's an exciting time that we live in for this film. The only two other things that were kind of announced this week that I thought were of note were that Freaky is getting a Scream Factory 4K.
Okay.
So that's pretty interesting.
I
I know
still
there's a
haven't
lot
seen
of
this one
fans of
yet.
that. I haven't either. I haven't even seen Happy Death Day 1 or 2, but a lot of people talk pretty favorably of those films. So it's one that I'll definitely have to check out at some point. And one that I wasn't I thought at first, oh, okay, so the sequel is going to come and get it, because I actually enjoyed the sequel by Mike Flanagan a lot. But no, we are getting the first Ouija from 2014 on Scream Factory 4K. Not going to be picking this one up. You know, I don't really, I'm not too fond of that film. But
Neither
if
am
the
I.
sequel was to come out on 4K, I would definitely
Yes. No,
be
that
interested
one
in
is
grabbing
worthy of
that.
picking up.
Yeah. And then I just kind of get back into it. The only other thing that I saw here of note was that Cloverfield is getting a steel book here coming in January, which, you know, I like this film a lot. I like the sequel even more. I don't like the third one at all. But, you know, it is one of those things where it's kind of a neat cover. It's got that slipcase with the camera, and then you're presented with the artwork of the monster there. So,
Yeah,
thought it was
definitely
kind of neat.
a fun cover there. Fun movie, fun cover.
Yeah, for my kaiju lovers out there, I mean, it's a good fun thing if you don't own the film already. But yeah, other than that, there isn't much else to discuss on the Gorecast here, guys. Like I didn't check to see what's coming out this week. I didn't do my due diligence to see what's coming out in theaters. I don't think we have anything horror based in that first week here of November. I think we're keeping it pretty light. Again, we have like the menu and stuff coming out this month that we'll be able to talk about. Um, One thing I did want to say at some point on the show today was that it was brought to my attention from Luke that I did give some misinformation last week when we said we were going to be reviewing The Lair. So The Lair was coming out, the new Neil Marshall film. The Lair is coming out on VOD this week. So it is out. You can rent it for $6, but it is not hitting Shudder until early next year. So
We
we
gotta
will not
wait
be
on that
having
review.
we're not going to be putting out a review just yet for it. We're going to wait until Shudder releases it on our end there for it.
Keeping us in suspense unless it pops up somewhere else before Shudder does get it.
And the other big thing I wanted to highlight channel wise is that we do have our live stream coming at the literally Halloween. We're going to be doing it at approximately about 8 p.m. I think is when I'd like to set that up. Luke and I still have to finalize that. I'll be posting that tomorrow or at least today at some point. So that way we can get it out there and you guys can see. But I want to get us all in there to watch The Black Phone, where we'll be watching that and giving our commentary. We had a good, fun bit of time with it with Halloween 4 just this past Friday. So we'll be able to do that again here with The Black Phone. And we will be giving away a copy of The Black Phone, if you don't already know, to a lucky winner. You can enter in the description down below, as well as a Splatterthon mug. So if you have not yet entered, feel free to do so because, yeah, we're giving this stuff away, man, and we only have a few entries. So, the odds are pretty much in your favor.
I'm going to enter.
You already have it. What do you mean you're going to enter?
I want 2 copies of everything. You know this. I'm a collector.
Fair enough. As far as other things to look forward to on the channel, and this kind of ties in with Gorecast stuff, is, again, Terrifier 2 news. Screambox is going to be releasing Terrifier 2 to everybody who is a subscriber of their streaming service to watch on Halloween. And you'll be able to stream it, therefore, after. From everything I did my research on, I believe that's how it's going to work. So at some point, we haven't figured out when exactly, but we wanted to tell you guys this now, is we are going to be doing another live watch and commentary of Terrifier 2. That'll be early November here. We'll try to get that out for you guys because we had a lot of fun with Halloween 4. And I think with just the amount of love and support that this film's been getting, and I'm eager to watch it again. I'm sure you're eager to see it again. I think that this would be a great one to sit back and just talk about with you guys in the chat and just throw it on and enjoy some Terrifier.
Oh, man. And then we get that Chris Jericho cameo in Terrifier 2 that I was excited about. So I can't speak enough about Terrifier 2. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. I don't know. These live watches are turning to be a very, very fun time, I think. Touch base with everyone on the channel, kind of gets field some questions. Very, very fun time.
No, we enjoyed that first one. So hopefully that you guys enjoy them and we keep them going. But that's going to wrap us up here for the Gorecast, as well as wrapping us up here for the Sunday Scaries. So thank you for joining us, everyone. I hope I didn't do too bad here, Luke, steering the ship. Just a couple of dents and bumps there, but she ain't beat up too bad, in my opinion.
A solid 666 for you, Dylan.
Perfect. Awesome. See, I even got all dressed up for you. But yeah, other than that, guys, you can follow us on all our social media at Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SplattercastPod, as you can keep up with us on there for all the latest and greatest. Other than that, we do have a lot of great content still hitting the channel. We're coming down to the wire here on Splatterthon. Tomorrow is the last day. Like we said, we got the live stream. That's our big crescendo here. But we also have some content coming your way. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a good bit of fun. Potentially, just throwing a little teaser out there of a potential new series that could be hitting the channel. I don't want to take the sail out of the winds there. We'll see. But yeah, it's it's going to be interesting. Tomorrow is going to be a good bit of fun on All Hallows Eve. Luke, do you have anything for the folks before we head out?
No, just stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff coming, like Dylan said. Still staying busy here in the last couple days of October. Finishing up the Splatterthon very strong, I would say.
I think so too. And yeah, we are still trying to reach that goal of getting to 500 subscribers at this point of recording. Let me do a double check here, but I believe we were at 559. So we are pretty close. I think that with a little bit of coaxing, we could get over that hump. So I'm kind of hoping that, with the last little bits of content, we get some new guys in here. So if you are a subscriber and you're watching this right now and you haven't recommended us to any of your fellow horror friends, please do so. We'd love to get some more people in here. And if we could hit that goal of 500 by the end of the month, that would just be absolutely insane. Because our initial goal was to hit 100. So we've already crushed it.
It's all gravy, baby.
You guys have already done an amazing job. So I'm not going to be upset if we don't even reach it, because I know we'll get there soon enough. But I mean, it would just be the cherry on top of the ultimate success of this endeavor this past month. So,
oh man, what a wild ride!
All again, obviously, yeah. Thank you so much for everybody who has shown up and has stuck with us. But alrighty, so I guess until next time, I'm Dylan Newell,
and I'm Luke Janesco,
and remember, stay scared.